I never imagined I'd be sharing something like this. But here we are. Buckle up because this is going to be a wild ride. I'm Jake, and for the past 6 years, I was married to a woman named Samantha. Now, before you jump to conclusions about us being the perfect couple, let me set the record straight. We definitely weren't. Still, we had a decent life together. About a month ago, things started to feel off. Samantha had her phone glued to her side. It seemed like she couldn't be without it. Every little thing had her scrambling for that device, her face lighting up with a smile as if she'd just struck gold. She became incredibly secretive, too. Whenever I walked into the room, she would hide her phone like it contained state secrets. And those late nights? They suddenly became her new norm. Out of nowhere, she claimed to have piles of work at the office. But in all the years I knew her, the only late nights she ever had were spent binge-watching Friends on Netflix. Of course, I pretended not to notice. Part of me was in denial. We had a nice house and a pretty good life together. Why would she want to mess that up? Yet, my gut just wouldn't let it rest. There was this nagging feeling that something was amiss, but I kept suppressing it because, honestly, who wants to face such suspicions? But one night, everything shifted. I was packing for a business trip, just a quick overnight thing a couple of hours away. While we were having dinner, making small talk, she seemed way too cheerful, almost as if she was thrilled for my departure. That's when it struck me. Her entire demeanor was like someone eagerly awaiting a long-anticipated delivery. The irony hit me hard. I was the one leaving, not her. Later that night, I overheard her on the phone, speaking in hushed tones like a teenager sneaking out to meet a crush. Samantha has never been particularly good at keeping secrets, so it didn't take much for me to connect the dots. I caught snippets of her conversation. Phrases like, "Tomorrow night's perfect. He'll be gone," and my favorite, "Don't worry. We'll have the place to ourselves," filtered through the wall. Yeah, real subtle, right? As I lay next to her, I found sleep elusive. A cold, simmering rage began to bubble up inside me. But I stayed silent. I needed to play this smart. I wasn't going to explode and give her the opportunity to cover her tracks. No way. A plan was brewing in my mind. So, there I was, lying in bed next to a woman who clearly had other plans for the next day. I could have confronted her, tossed her phone against the wall, and demanded to know who she was sneaking around with. But no, I was too furious for that. I wanted to hit her where it hurt. The element of surprise was my weapon of choice. I needed to see her get caught red-handed. No escape, no flimsy excuses. I decided right then that I wouldn't be going on that business trip after all. The next day, I told my boss I needed some personal time off. Fortunately, my boss is a good guy, and he granted me the time off without hesitation. Next on my agenda, the electronics store. I dropped a small fortune on surveillance gear, cameras, hidden microphones, and a slick setup to monitor everything remotely. If she was planning to bring her lover into my home, I was going to have a front row seat for their disgusting little rendezvous. While she was at work, I installed all the gear. Thanks to countless spy movies, I knew just where to hide the cameras. The living room, the kitchen, the bedroom, and even the bathroom, basically anywhere she might take her lover. I was determined to witness it all. But I didn't just want to sit back and watch this disaster unfold. No, I had a little surprise of my own in mind. We had dinner plans that night before my supposed trip, and I made sure to prepare the meal. I slipped the strongest laxatives I could find into her food. I know I was being petty, but when your wife is plotting to cheat on you in your own home, I think all bets are off. That evening, as we sat down to eat, Samantha was practically glowing. She must have thought she was so clever, playing house with me, while secretly planning to bring another man into my bed. I watched her devour her meal, pretending to be carefree, all while knowing her night was about to go horribly wrong. As soon as dinner ended, I gave her a kiss on the cheek, grabbed my suitcase, and said, "See you tomorrow night, babe." She waved me off like the dutiful wife she pretended to be as I walked out the door. But instead of heading to the airport, I drove about 10 minutes to a hotel. There, I set up my laptop, connected it to the cameras I'd installed, and waited. Let me tell you, watching your wife rush around to tidy up for her lover is an image that stays with you forever. She was darting around, fixing her hair, slipping into a new dress I hadn't even seen before. The audacity. And then the doorbell rang. I sat in my hotel room, watching Samantha bolt to the door like an excited schoolgirl. She fluffed her hair one last time in the hallway mirror, smoothed out her dress, and opened the door to let in her Prince Charming. But this guy looked more like the janitor from a rundown motel. I nearly burst out laughing at the sight of him. His name, as I would later find out, was Tyler, because of course it was, and he resembled a balding version of Bogart, looking like he hadn't seen a gym in a decade. And this was the guy she was throwing everything away for. I leaned back in my chair, cracked open a beer, and settled in to watch the drama unfold. Tyler strolled in with a grin, clutching a bottle of cheap wine, as if they were about to embark on some grand romantic evening. They began chatting and laughing awkwardly, like two teenagers on a first date. It made my skin crawl, knowing the truth behind their little charade. They plopped down on the couch, wine glasses in hand, and I could see Samantha doing her best to play it cool. But then I noticed something was off. She shifted in her seat a little, then again and again. I knew exactly what was happening. The laxative was kicking in. Trying to act casual, she excused herself and dashed for the bathroom. Tyler, bless his clueless heart, just sat there sipping his wine, oblivious to the storm brewing. Meanwhile, I was glued to the hidden bathroom camera, and let me tell you, she was not holding it together. She was sitting on the toilet, her face contorted in discomfort, and it looked like she was in the midst of an all-out intestinal crisis. It was almost poetic. The best part? She attempted to make it a quick trip, but this was no ordinary situation you could just breeze through. After what felt like an eternity, she re-emerged, looking slightly pale, and sat back next to Tyler as if nothing had happened. But I could see the panic in her eyes. Tyler, oblivious as ever, leaned in closer, clearly hoping for some action. But just as his hand slid up her leg, bam, there she went again, bolting for the bathroom. I nearly choked on my beer from laughing so hard. By the time she made her second appearance, it was evident that the evening wasn't going as planned. Tyler was getting visibly frustrated while Samantha looked utterly mortified. They tried to salvage the night, but every time things got even remotely intimate, Samantha had to make yet another desperate dash to the bathroom. It felt like I was watching a soap opera where the punchline kept hitting, and there I was sitting in my hotel room with popcorn and a beer, living for every moment. They attempted to watch a movie, but Samantha couldn't even sit still for 5 minutes without needing to excuse herself. Eventually, Tyler picked up on the fact that something was seriously wrong. He kept asking her if she was okay, and she kept lying through her teeth. "Oh, I'm fine. Must have eaten something bad at lunch." "Sure, Samantha. Definitely the salad you didn't even have." Before long, the romantic atmosphere had completely evaporated. Tyler was annoyed, Samantha was humiliated, and the whole evening turned into an epic fail. They started bickering, with Tyler accusing her of being distant, while Samantha snapped back, clearly trying to keep it together, literally and figuratively. She stormed off to the bathroom one last time, and that's when Tyler reached his limit. He stood up, grabbed his jacket, and walked out without a word. I almost felt sorry for him, watching her sit there alone, probably contemplating how her dreamy night morphed into the worst date imaginable, gave me a satisfaction I can't quite put into words. But the best was yet to come. So there I was in my hotel room, witnessing the fallout of the world's most disastrous date unfold in real time. Samantha was left alone, likely replaying the evening in her mind, questioning where everything had gone wrong. Meanwhile, I was grinning from ear to ear, fully aware that the laxative chaos was all my doing. Sure, it was petty, but after everything I had seen, I felt entitled to a little revenge. I watched her slump back onto the couch, clearly worn out from her bathroom runs and the emotional wreckage of the night. She started sending a few texts, likely trying to explain herself to Tyler, but he didn't respond. I couldn't blame him. If I had to deal with that level of chaos, I'd have ghosted her too. She looked like she was on the verge of tears, but honestly, I felt nothing. If anything, I felt a little smug watching her squirm. Eventually, she gave up trying to salvage the night. Tossing her phone onto the couch, I could see her simmering with frustration. She was probably angry at Tyler, at herself, at the universe for derailing her little fling, unaware that the universe had a name, Jake, and I was just getting started. By the next morning, I had a clear plan forming in my head. I was done living in a house where I knew she was scheming behind my back. So when I returned home that afternoon, I wasted no time. As soon as I stepped through the door, Samantha perked up like nothing was wrong, like she hadn't just been scrambling to hide her dirty little secret only hours ago. "How was your trip?" she asked, sporting that fake smile she'd likely rehearsed. I couldn't even look at her. "We need to talk," I said, cutting straight to the chase, and the smile vanished from her face. "I know what you've been up to, Samantha." I started, and I could see her body tense up. Her eyes darted around, as if searching for a quick excuse or an escape route. She stammered something about not knowing what I was talking about, but I wasn't buying it. "Don't. Just don't," I said, raising my hand. "I've seen everything, the cameras, the texts. Your little plan to have Tyler over while I was gone? I know it all." Her face went pale, and for a second, I thought she might faint. But instead, she switched tactics. The waterworks began, tears streaming down her face as she tried to plead her case. "Jay, please. It's not what you think," she wailed, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I was feeling so lonely, and we've grown so distant. I messed up, but I promise I didn't sleep with him. Nothing happened." I couldn't help but chuckle at her desperation. "Nothing happened? Really? Because you spent the entire night glued to the toilet, Samantha." "I made sure of that," I said, watching her expression shift to shock. "Yeah, I laced your dinner with laxatives. I figured if you were going to betray me in our own home, the least I could do was make sure it wasn't a pleasurable experience." Her mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water, utterly speechless. The tears continued to pour, and she reached for me, but I stepped back. "Don't even think about touching me," I said, my voice dripping with ice. "I don't care about your feelings right now. You've been deceiving me for who knows how long, and now it's over." She crumpled onto the couch, sobbing uncontrollably, but I felt no pity, not even a shred. "You have until the end of the week to pack your things and get out," I declared, my tone unyielding. "If you're still here after that, I'll toss your belongings into the trash. And don't even try to guilt-trip me into changing my mind. I've already filed for divorce. You're finished." Panic flickered across her face. She knew I meant every word. "Please, Jake. I'll do anything. I was foolish. We can fix this. I can't lose you," she begged, her voice trembling with desperation. "It's too late for that," I replied, turning my back on her. "You didn't care about losing me when you invited that loser into our lives. Now you have to face the consequences." I exited the living room, leaving her crying on the couch, and locked myself in the bedroom. I refused to let her manipulate me into forgiving her. I wasn't going to let her gaslight me into thinking this was something we could mend. It was over. She knew it, I knew it, and soon everyone else would know it too. Little did she realize, I had one final ace up my sleeve. I wish I could say I felt some sort of satisfaction after that confrontation, but honestly, I was still boiling with rage. The entire situation felt like a surreal nightmare I couldn't escape from, and her tears did nothing to soften the impact. So while she continued to cry in the living room, I locked myself in the bedroom and began assembling the final pieces of my plan. You see, simply kicking her out and getting a divorce wasn't enough for me. I wanted her to truly comprehend the weight of her actions. Samantha might have thought she could cheat on me and just walk away with a teary apology, but I wasn't about to let her off the hook that easily. And as for Tyler, well, his reckoning was coming too. The following morning, I woke up before she did. It felt like living with a ghost. She had spent the night in the guest room, likely sobbing herself to sleep, and honestly, I couldn't care less. I grabbed my phone and made a few crucial calls, first to my lawyer to finalize the divorce papers. I wanted her served by the end of the week, and then I dialed Tyler's wife. That's right, Tyler had a wife, and her name was Lauren. She had no idea about her scumbag husband's extracurricular activities. Luckily for her, I did. I made that call that morning. It wasn't a conversation I was looking forward to, but it was necessary. The phone rang a few times before she picked up. "Hello," she answered, her voice bright and cheerful, completely unaware of the storm brewing. "Hi, Lauren," I said, attempting to keep my tone steady. "I'm Jake, Samantha's husband." There was a pause, and I could almost hear her brain processing this revelation. "Oh, Jake. Hi. Is everything okay?" she asked, clearly confused. I took a deep breath and cut to the chase. Listen, I hate to be the one to inform you, but I think you need to know that Tyler has been seeing my wife behind your back. They were planning to meet at our house while I was away for work. I have proof, and I thought you deserved to see it. Another long pause followed, and then in a much softer tone, she asked, Are you sure about this? Unfortunately, yes, I replied, feeling the familiar surge of anger rising in my chest. I have emails, texts, and footage from security cameras. I can send you everything if you want. After hanging up, I glanced at Samantha, still in the guest room, likely pondering if I'd change my mind. Spoiler alert, I wouldn't. Later that day, I met Lauren at a small coffee shop nearby. When I arrived, I realized Lauren was absolutely stunning. How could Tyler cheat on her with Samantha? I mean, I know my wife wasn't unattractive, but compared to Lauren, it felt like Tyler was trading in a luxury sports car for a rusted-out old clunker. When I handed Lauren the evidence I had gathered, emails, screenshots, and even video clips, I could see the devastation wash over her face. I almost felt guilty delivering the news, but she deserved the truth, and Tyler certainly deserved whatever came next. We sat together for a while, discussing the entire mess. She thanked me for telling her, but I could see she was shattered. She kept shaking her head in disbelief, murmuring, How could he do this? I thought we were happy. We exchanged numbers, and I offered my support if she needed more evidence or help. I wasn't trying to be her knight in shining armor, but I figured if we were both going through this dumpster fire of betrayal, we might as well look out for one another. As I walked back to my car, I realized this was the final nail in the coffin for Samantha's affair and her life as she knew it. She wasn't just losing me. Tyler was about to lose his wife too. Once that happened, the entire house of cards would come crashing down for everyone involved. But I wasn't finished yet. After meeting with Lauren, a strange calm washed over me. The ball was rolling, and I knew it wouldn't be long before everything fell apart for both Samantha and Tyler. They thought they could outsmart me, that they could toy with both of us without any consequences. But now the truth was laid bare, and I was eager to see how they would react. When I got home that night, I found Samantha slumped at the kitchen table, looking like she hadn't slept a wink. Her eyes were filled with a desperate hope, as if she believed I might suddenly decide to forgive her. I didn't have the energy to entertain such fantasies. You've got 3 days, I stated bluntly, slapping a copy of the divorce papers onto the table. I'm crashing at a friend's place until you're gone. If you're still here by the end of the week, I'll have the cops haul you out. Her eyes widened in shock, disbelief washing over her face. Jake, wait, please. We can talk about this. I didn't actually sleep with him. Can't we just... I cut her off, my patience wearing thin. Don't even try that. Whether you slept with him or not doesn't matter. You were planning to, and that's enough for me. You betrayed me, Samantha. There's no coming back from this. She attempted to argue, to twist the narrative in her favor, but I was done listening. I had no time for her lies, excuses, or those faux tears she was so good at producing. Every word from her felt like another attempt to manipulate the situation. So, I turned and walked away, ignoring the sound of her sobs as I went upstairs to pack a bag. But I had one last bombshell to drop before I left. Oh, and by the way, I said casually, I met with Tyler's wife today. I showed her everything. The look of horror that washed over Samantha's face was priceless. It was as if all the blood drained from her body. You what? She stammered, her voice trembling. Yep, I said, leaning against the doorframe, a smirk creeping onto my face. Turns out Tyler's been lying to her too. She knows it all now. I wouldn't be shocked if she was already talking to a divorce attorney. Samantha looked as though she had been punched in the gut, her hands shaking as she processed my words. Jake? No, you didn't. Why would you do that? This is between us. I couldn't help but laugh at her sheer audacity. Between us? Are you kidding me? You've completely destroyed our marriage, Samantha. Now you need to face the music. Tyler's wife deserves to know the truth just as much as I did. She stood up from the table, her face contorted with desperation. But Jake, I love you. I never wanted it to come to this. I don't know what I was thinking. Can't we fix this? I shook my head slowly, feeling a mix of anger and pity. You weren't thinking about me, that much is clear. You were only concerned with yourself and your little affair with Tyler. You didn't give a second thought to how this would affect me or what we had. Now it's over. You made your choice. Live with it. I walked out, leaving her standing there in stunned silence. Part of me wondered if she really believed I would let this slide, that we could somehow put the pieces back together and move on. But there was no way that would ever happen. Trust, once shattered, can never truly be repaired, and Samantha had shattered it beyond repair. As I drove to Ryan's place, my phone buzzed with a message. It was Lauren. I confronted Tyler, she texted. He tried to deny everything, but when I showed him the proof, he broke down and admitted it all. I'm filing for divorce. A grim sense of satisfaction washed over me. Tyler and Samantha had thought they could sneak around and build a new life together. But now their entire world was crumbling, and they had no one to blame but themselves. In the days that followed, everything spiraled out of control. I stayed at Ryan's, who welcomed me with open arms, ready with a cold beer and a sympathetic ear when I shared the details. He'd never cared for Samantha much, but had kept that to himself until now. I appreciated the support, even though it felt surreal to be lounging on his couch while my soon-to-be ex-wife was at home plotting her next move. Naturally, Samantha tried every trick in the book to win me back. My phone was flooded with messages, calls, and voicemails, all filled with the same tired apologies. It was a mistake, Jake. I'll do anything to fix this. Please don't throw away our marriage. As if I was the one tossing it aside. She had made that choice the moment she decided to betray me. I ignored every single message. The only discussion left to have would take place in a courtroom. Meanwhile, things with Tyler and Lauren were unraveling too. Within 48 hours, Tyler found himself served with divorce papers and tossed out of the house. Apparently, he tried to win Lauren back with the same sob story Samantha had tried on me, but Lauren was not one to be trifled with. She was smart, resilient, and she wasn't about to let him manipulate her. Lauren and I maintained our connection throughout all this chaos. We weren't exactly becoming best friends, but there was an unexpected sense of camaraderie between us. After all, we were both facing the same betrayal, and it helped to have someone who truly understood the pain we were both enduring. We texted occasionally, sharing updates on the fallout, almost like we were comparing notes on our mutual disaster. There was something oddly comforting in knowing I wasn't the only one whose life had been turned upside down. Then, on the Friday of that week, I received a text from Samantha. Jake, I'm coming to pick up my things. Please be home so we can talk. I rolled my eyes, scoffing at the request. There was nothing left to discuss. Still, I figured it was time to officially sever her from my life. I had agreed to meet Samantha at the house, primarily because I wasn't about to let her rummage through our belongings unsupervised. Trust was long gone, and I wasn't willing to give her any leeway. When I pulled into the driveway that afternoon, her car was already parked outside. She was inside, looking utterly defeated. It was clear she hadn't slept or eaten in days, and her appearance was disheveled. A fleeting twinge of sympathy crossed my mind, but it quickly faded, overwhelmed by memories of her betrayal. She'd made her choices, and now she had to face the consequences. I stepped out of my car and approached her, crossing my arms as I leaned against the porch railing. You've got until tomorrow to grab your things and leave, I stated bluntly, skipping the usual niceties. She looked up at me, her eyes swollen and red. Jake, please. Can't we at least talk this out? I sighed, shaking my head. What's there to talk about, Samantha? You cheated, you lied, and you wrecked our marriage. You've run out of chances. It's done. She opened her mouth as if to argue, but quickly shut it, recognizing there was nothing she could say that would change my mind. I still love you, she whispered, almost as if she were trying to convince herself. I let out a sharp, humorless laugh. Yeah, well, I used to love you too. But that was before you decided that Tyler was worth more than everything we built together. Now, I don't feel anything at all. Her face fell, and for a moment, I thought she might try to beg once more. But instead, she nodded, a defeated look crossing her features. Fine, she said quietly. I'll pack my things. I watched as she entered the house, and for the first time in days, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. This was the end, the moment she started clearing out her stuff. I stood in the living room, observing her as she tossed clothes into boxes. Her movements were slow and lethargic, as if she were trapped in a fog. A part of me wanted to feel bad for her, but I couldn't bring myself to do it, not after everything that had happened. A few hours later, when she finally finished, the house felt lighter, almost as if her very presence had been suffocating me, and I could finally breathe. She dragged the last of her bags out to her car, and I followed her to the front door. "Good, Samantha," I said, my voice void of emotion, providing nothing but cold finality. She turned to face me one last time, regret swimming in her eyes. "Goodbye, Jake," she whispered, and without another word, she got in her car and drove away. I stood there, watching her taillights disappear down the street, and for the first time in a long while, I felt a sense of liberation. But just when I thought I could finally move on, life threw me one last curveball. After Samantha's car vanished from sight, I lingered in the doorway for a moment, staring at the empty street, feeling a strange mixture of relief and fatigue. It was truly over, or so I thought. I turned to head back inside, ready to collapse on the couch and soak in the tranquility of my newly liberated life. As I walked into the living room, my phone buzzed in my pocket. It was a text from Lauren. "We need to talk. Call me when you can." I raised an eyebrow. Lauren and I had been in touch, but this message felt different, urgent. I wasted no time, dialing her number and pressing the phone to my ear as I settled into a chair. "Hey, what's going on?" I asked. Her voice trembled, hinting at suppressed emotions. "Jake, I just found out something about Tyler. Something you really need to know." My stomach dropped. What more could possibly come from this disaster? "Okay, lay it on me," I replied, bracing for impact. She hesitated for a moment before delivering the news. Tyler wasn't just involved with Samantha. He's been seeing other women too, lots of them. My jaw tightened. "You mean to tell me Samantha wasn't even his only affair?" "Not even close," Lauren replied, her tone bitter. "Tyler's been unfaithful with multiple women. From what I can tell, Samantha was just one in a long line of flings. I thought you should be aware of that." I sat in stunned silence. Samantha hadn't just strayed for some fleeting romance. She was just another face in a crowd of his conquests. My anger reignited, fiercer than before. The thought that Samantha had tossed aside our marriage for that, some serial cheater who clearly didn't give a damn about her, made the entire situation even more pathetic. "Thanks for letting me know," I finally said, trying to digest the overwhelming information. "I guess it just shows they both deserve whatever's coming to them." Lauren sighed deeply. "Yeah, it's been rough. I'm filing for divorce, obviously, but honestly, it feels surreal. I can't believe this is my reality now." I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. "Trust me, I understand, but you're doing the right thing. We both are. We're better off without them." She fell silent for a moment before responding. "You're right. It's just hard to see that sometimes." "I know," I reassured her. "But we'll get through this. They're the ones who have to deal with the fallout from their choices." We continued to talk for a while, sharing our disbelief over how two people could destroy not one, but two marriages for a meaningless fling. It was almost comical, except neither of us was in a laughing mood by the time we hung up. I sat there, staring at my phone in a daze. Samantha had no clue about Tyler's other affairs, about how she wasn't special to him at all. A part of me wanted to throw that in her face, to revel in her humiliation, but another part of me realized I didn't care anymore. She was no longer my problem. A few days went by, and I began to settle into a new routine. The house was quieter, cleaner, and most importantly, free from the tension that had been hanging over it for months. Samantha texted me a few more times, pleading for another chance, but I ignored every message. It was over, and I had found my peace. Then one evening, I received another surprise, a knock at the door. I opened it to find Lauren standing there, looking as weary as I felt. "Hey," she greeted softly. "Hey," I replied, stepping aside to let her in. We settled down in the living room, and for a while we talked, not about Samantha or Tyler or the affairs, but about life and what lay ahead. It felt strange to share space with someone who had endured the same storm, yet still felt like a stranger in many ways. But there was a comforting familiarity in our shared experiences. We were both navigating the wreckage, trying to figure out how to rebuild. Eventually, Lauren smiled. A small, weary smile, but it felt genuine. "You know," she said, "it's odd, but I feel like we're going to be okay. Maybe not today or tomorrow, but eventually." I nodded, a flicker of hope igniting within me. "Yeah, we will." For the first time since this entire ordeal began, I truly believed it. As we sat together in a comfortable silence, I realized something profound. Betrayal can shatter you. It can tear your world apart and leave you questioning everything. But it doesn't have to define you. It doesn't have to be the end. You can pick up the pieces, rebuild, and even find a glimmer of light amidst the darkness. Samantha and Tyler? They were just chapters in our lives. And now, we were beginning new ones. That's my story. If you're reading this and facing something similar, just know that life exists after betrayal. You can survive it. You can move on. And who knows? Maybe, just maybe, you'll find something even better waiting for you on the other side.